Welcome back, everybody, to the Late Night Review. And tonight I want to talk about one of my very favorite movies of all time, Superman with Christopher Reeve. This is my favorite Superman movie of all time. I love all the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, even 3 and 4. They get criticized a lot, but I'm a fan of Superman. I grew up with the comic books. He's always been my favorite superhero. I just love the art of Kurt Swan and Jack Kirby, Wayne Boring, and then later Alex Ross grew on me. Even though I was always focused on the older comic books in the 90s, Alex Ross came along and he became one of my favorite artists too. And Kingdom Come, that was just a fantastic comic book. And the art by Alex Ross was amazing. And like I said, Kurt Swan, Jack Kirby, Wayne Boring, there's many others, many other artists. Those are the guys I usually, those are the artists I usually like the best. Those are the Supermen that I like the best, their versions of Superman. And then, of course, Alex Ross with his Justice League and Kingdom Come, all that really inspired me and fascinated me. And of course, we get the Superman movie with Christopher Reeve. I was a baby, I was born in 77. This came out just a little bit after I was born. And I grew up with this. I watched this as a kid over and over and over again. I was taken to the drive-in. I believe it was the drive-in to see part two. Was taken to the theater to see part three. I walked out crying when he got drunk because Superman was my idol. He was my hero. When he turned bad, I actually cried and went out of the theater. I remember there was a lady. She looked at me and kind of smiled when I left the theater because she knew I took it so serious. And then I came back in, and then he won the fight in the junkyard and turned back into Superman. And that, anyway, I was really pumped, and the whole audience in the theater stood up and clapped when he won the fight in the junkyard, and then he opened up his shirt and you could see the S, and everyone clapped. And so I was back on board after that. And then when part four came out, I think it was 1987, I really enjoyed that. I was 10 years old, and the special effects weren't that good at all, but I really enjoyed all four movies. But Superman 1 is what I'm talking about tonight. I love this movie. I think it was very well cast. Superman, Christopher Reeve, you can't get better than that. He's my favorite Superman of all time. There's been others who have done it really well. Christopher Reeve, though, has always been my Superman. He's the one I grew up with. He'll always be Superman to me. And these movies are fantastic. And part one is probably the best made, along with part two. I go back and forth. I usually like part one the best. When I was a kid, it was always part two. But as I've gotten older, I kind of gravitate back to the first one. And I enjoy 3 and 4, because I'm a fan. And I actually thought they were pretty fun. They were pretty entertaining as well. I think part 1 and 2 were the best made. And Richard Donner, what a director. And just bringing the character to life, the character that so many people have known and loved for so long. And I really like everything about this film. It's got some funny parts, some kind of silly, goofy parts, but it also has more serious aspects than the modern day comic book movies, in my opinion, because Richard Donner did the Lethal Weapon series, which was a mixture of action, comedy, but he also did The Omen, which was a very serious and very scary movie. And with Superman 1, when Superman on the farm, when he's young, young Clark, and he hears something, and it's that crystal, it's that green power crystal. He can hear it in the barn. And that scene, how Richard Donner sets it up, and then you have the music in Superman. This is the best score of any superhero movie, in my opinion. And you have the best comic book actor of all time, I think, Christopher Reeve, as Superman. So when you have that score, and you have Richard Donner as the director, you have your lead, Christopher Reeve, as your Superman, you really can't get much better than that. And it was well written, all these aspects coming together to make a great film. But the seriousness of this movie, like when the planet Krypton is destroyed, you have the three criminals who are before the council, and they're found guilty. There's a lot of seriousness in here. Yes, you got the goofy parts and the comic book type comedy, but when it wants to be serious, when this movie wants to be serious, it's really serious. Like when he goes into the barn, he opens the doors and it's almost dawn, and he discovers the craft that he came in as a baby, and he finds the green power crystal, and then he finds out what he has to do with the music and with Donner's direction. I think it was just really, really serious. And then also you get the transformation scene, when he changes into Superman in the Fortress of Solitude as his, right after his father, Jor-El, played by Marlon Brando, tells him everything he needs to know about himself pretty much, and gives him a long education. In fact, he was there, I think, for 12 years, according to the story in the movie. And I've seen this movie so many times, and I could still watch it, have a good time. And it's just so well done. And then I like his outfit. His outfit is so awesome. It's more reminiscent and more similar to the comic books, the pictures, the artwork that I grew up with. I mean, his uniform looked powerful. I'm not a fan when they change his uniform to a dark color. I like the really bright blue, red, and yellow colors. If they changed the yellow to gold, I guess I wouldn't mind that. Or if they did some variations like they did with Shazam, which Shazam, I think, looks really, really good. But I like the bright colors. Why? Because it makes Superman look more strong. It makes him look more powerful. So when you see his uniform, nowadays it's too dark. But back then, with Christopher Reeve, his uniform was so bright and beautiful. He looks like he can do supernatural stuff. He looks like he can lift a mountain or a planet. He looks like he can fly super fast because it's almost like it glowed. It was almost like there was a power coming from the uniform itself. And this, again, the score in here, the score is so, so awesome. It's just fantastic. The score in here, the music is amazing. I don't think there's any superhero movie that has better music. And with the directing by Richard Donner, and I think the special effects not only hold up, but there's no CGI where it looks animated. Everything's practical. Christopher Reeve was on wires. You get practical things, real things, tangible things that you could touch. There's no computer generated graphics in here like they have nowadays. Sometimes they could do it successfully, but everything in here is practical, and I think it looks, not only does it hold up, but I think it looks more real than a lot of the modern comic book movies just because of the way they did it. And it's basically, you do believe a man could fly, but it has all those elements, all the original elements of the comic book Superman. It has his great power, his strength. They have the phone booth in here, but it's only half a phone booth, so he has to run across the street and change in a different way. I've always enjoyed this movie, and it's a movie that I never get tired of, and I can rewatch it quite a bit. And I think that the scenes where he's in the city, finds out obviously for the first time he changes into Superman and actually goes out and he rescues Lois Lane in the helicopter incident. He stops the thief on the building and then the other criminals who are shooting it out with the police. He saves Air Force One. And it's just the way it was done, the way it was shot with the buildings at night, and the way his uniform looked when he's flying. It was awesome. It was just awesome. Christopher Reeve brought this character to life. And I think part two is really awesome too. It was actually my favorite as a kid. And but I went back to part one. I kept gravitating back to part one over the years. And yeah, and then John Williams does the score. Just an amazing job. He did the score for Jaws. Just an amazing talent. And Star Wars. He did the music for Star Wars as well. Just a fantastic and talented musician, composer, and just I can't say enough about this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I love how at the beginning it shows the comic books from June 1938 in the theater with the curtains opening, and then it leads into the score, and then you get all the credits with the blue and the stars in the background and the universe, and then at the end you can see Superman Christopher Reeve flying over the earth at the end. So yeah, and then the missile chase. I think the missile chase is really well done. I love when he displayed his strength when he's resetting the San Andreas fault, when he's going like this under the earth and he resets it and he lifts all the molten rock like that. And I think that's just cool. That's just awesome. And then of course Lex Luthor was brought to life by Gene Hackman, and Margot Kidder as Lois Lane did a fantastic job. I think they were really good together, had a lot of chemistry, her and Christopher Reeve, Superman, Lois Lane, and just all the elements. It seemed like all the elements, all the stars aligned, the planets aligned, I should say. Yeah, planets aligned, but all this, everything was in place for this. All the elements came together to make this really awesome movie. And there's other superhero movies that I like too. Nowadays, there's quite a few good ones, but this is still my favorite. And maybe I'll touch on some others in the future. I'm not sure, but definitely want to do Superman 2 one day. But I have quite a few more videos I think I have to get to before I come back to the Superman franchise. But this is really awesome. I have a fantasy. I have in my fantasy, in my imagination, I have a Superman movie that I can never see except in my mind. And that's Clint Walker as Superman, or Christopher Reeve, and Telly Savalas as Lex Luthor, and Yul Brynner as Brainiac with Richard Donner directing. Maybe Mario Puzo as the writer. But yeah, and just in my dreams, that would be an interesting movie. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Late Night Review looking at Superman, the movie. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe, share it with others so other people could see this too. And take care, everybody. Until next time, have a good night.